Hey everyone. Today we're going to go over how to use Redux with React, in this case React Native, and also how to organize your project to set up different modules, and then we can combine those reducers into an overall store. So to get started, let's create a new Expo project. So I'm going to do an Expo managed workflow. So if you open your terminal, we can go to wherever you have your workspace, and we'll do Expo init. And what kind of app do we want to make? We could do, I guess, the generic to-do app for now, make it simple. And I'm going to choose blank TypeScript. So let this run and install all the npm packages. Okay, so not too long. So now let's use VS Code. So we could use the code command and open to do our new project. All right, so we can close this terminal and then open the embedded terminal here. And let's see what we have. All right, so we have our basic app template here, and then in our terminal, let's now install Redux. So npm i -save Redux, and then also React-Redux. So we're going to install the basic Redux package, and then also the one that's specific for React. And then on top of that, let's do an npm i -save -dev at types/React-Redux. So this will give us all the typings for React Redux, since we're using TypeScript. Okay, so we have everything installed now. So let's go over to our app.tsx file, and let's do const store equals create store. And we're going to need a reducer here, but we don't have one yet, so we could leave it like that for now. And then above the view, let's say provider, and then we're going to wrap the view in the provider, and we'll say store equals store. So once we finish creating the store, it'll pass it in here, and it'll wrap all of our views in this provider, so we could access them inside these views. And if you have excuse me, a navigation or anything you want to put in your app, you could put that in here, and any of those pages should be able to still access the store. Okay, so let's go over and we'll create a new folder for store. And let's create a root reducer file .ts. And then we'd say export const root reducer equals combine reducers. And then we say export type root state equals return type of root reducer. So what we're doing here is we're going to combine a bunch of reducers here, all of our submodules in the store, and then we're going to just return the state of this root reducer instead of having to manually update it every time we update this. So now it's in the store folder. Let's create a new folder. We could say to do, and then in the to do folder, let's say reducer.ts. We could add selectors.ts, and then actions.ts. And we might as well do a model.ts. And in the model, let's do export interface to do. Let's give them an ID. Make that a number, title. Maybe we can give it date do. Make that have type date. And we can have a flag if it's completed or not, so we can make that a boolean. Okay, so that should be good for now. And then in our actions, we could say export enum, say to do action types. And we'll say, let's say load to-dos. So once we load, we can make a request to load all the to-dos from the back end, and we could fill the store with those. And something I've been trying to do is prefix all of the values here with the module that I'm in, just to make it a little safer in case there are any conflicting ones in other modules. So we have a load to-dos. Maybe we could have a, what else would we need? So we might add a single to-do, so add to-do. Here we might remove one. And if we update one. Okay, so for all of these, we're going to create action functions. So I don't know why I did that. Okay, so export const load to-dos, and we'll say to-dos, and then we'll import our model. You can use the VS Code auto import feature, and then we'll create a little arrow function, and this will return an object with the type. So this will be our action, and the type will be to-do action types dot load to-dos, and the payload will be to-dos. So we're going to use this for all 4 of our action types. So we'll say add to-do, and we'll remove the array, so this will just be a single one we're adding. Remove the S from there, and then we'll say remove to-do. We could really remove by ID, but I guess we could pass in the full thing. So the payload will be the to-do, and then update to-do. We'll pass in the full to-do. Okay, let's go through these and make sure everything looks good. So add, remove, update, load to-dos. They're all using the right action type. So that looks pretty good. So now we can go over to our reducer. And we can say we can do an export interface to-do state. And we're going to have a list of to-dos. So we can import our model again. And then maybe we'd have a current to-do. So if a user clicks on a to-do item, we can add that to the store as the current one, and then we can navigate to the detail page for that and display that to-do. And then we could say initial state. So if there's anything we want to set up initially, and we can make that of type to-do state, and then to-dos will be an array. And then current to-do, we make this optional because we might not have that at the beginning. And then const will export a reducer, so to-do reducer, and this will be an arrow function. We'll take the store, the state, and this could be equal to initial state. You can make this of type to-do state. And then it'll take an action. And for now, we'll make that any. And then here we could get the payload at the top. So if there is a payload, we can get it here. So action.payload. And then actually might as well split this up. So if you say equals action, you can get the type and the payload from that. Then we can do a switch on the type. And we could say if case to-do action types dot add to-do, we could do something. Case to-do action types dot remove to-do, we'll do something else. Update. And we'll do something else here. And then we have a default to just return the state. Okay, And so for adding a to-do, we'll say return, we'll keep the original state, and then we'll overwrite to-dos with state.todos, and then we'll add an additional option here, which will be the new to-do. And we could copy this, will be similar for the rest of them. So to-dos will be updated with, we'd say state.todos.filter. We're going to filter it so we keep every to-do except for the one that we're removing. ID doesn't equal payload.id. Update to-do. So for updating it to do, we can do a removal. So we'll filter out that one and do a concat payload. So we'll first remove it and then we'll push it back into the array. And just want to make sure it combines two or more arrays. So we could make that like that, or we can, what if we do a map? That might be cleaner. So we have a to do if to-do.id equals payload.id, and we'll say payload, otherwise we'll return the to-do. So we're going to just replace that one if it matches the ID with the payload. And for load to-dos, we could copy the first one again, and we'll say to-dos will equal the payload. So we'll pass in a full array of to-dos. So that should be good for our reducer. So now we can go to selectors. And what are we going to want to select? So we say export const select to-dos. So this will be all of them. And we say create selector. So take the state, which will be the root state. And then select to-dos, we want this to remove or return an array of to-dos. And we don't have anything in our root reducer yet, so we can go back to our root reducer and we'll say to-do, and then we'll say to-do reducer. So we'll create that, add that submodule here. So now we can go back to our selectors and say return state.todo.todos. It doesn't like this for some reason. Create selector hook. Oh, I think it's use selector. Oh yeah. So we could remove this create selector hook. Sorry about that. And if you want, you can clean this up a little bit, make it just a one-liner. So when you call select to-dos, we're gonna, here we have this initial function that when you call that, it's gonna return the result of use selector. And we're gonna get the root state. So that the root state is from the root reducer. We'll go down to the to-do, so we'll get the to-do reducer, and then we'll get the to-dos array off of that. And we might also want to get the current to-do. So we say select current to-do. And this will return a single to-do. And this could also be undefined. Okay, so now we have both of our selectors, and doing that, it reminds me, we added this additional property here to our state current to do. So we want to also add some actions for that. So we just add one action set current to do. This will let us update that current to do item. And this will be the same parameters, and maybe set current to do. Now it looks good. So now we just have to use this in the reducer. Make sure we handle that case. So we can copy one of these, say case to do action types that set current to do, say current to do equals the payload. So that should be handled now. Okay, so now if we go to the app, all right, so we could have this home page here, and this will be an arrow function, and we could return a JSX element, and we could just make this a view for now, and we could just say hello world. And in the store, we could actually initialize this and say root reducer. So now it's all starting to come together a little bit. And we have the provider. And normally we add navigation here, but let's make this simple. So we'll have a home page, and we'll have a detail page. And we could say store. Let's add a main function actually. It's going to be a little bit more complicated because we don't have the navigation set up, but I want to keep it simple. So we have a main page, and this will hold everything else. So let's put this last actually. So in the main page, we'll get the value from the store. So we'll say const current to do equals select current to do. So this will give us, it'll constantly update whenever the current to do value is updated in the store. And then here in the view, we could say if current to do, then show, we want to show the detail page. Otherwise, we'll show the home page. So this is like our simple navigation that we're creating our own. And it would be the same thing if you were using the React native navigator or like the tab navigator. You would just have your navigation here instead of the main page, and then you'd have like a pages folder with all of your components, and then in there you could do the same thing. Except you wouldn't have to do this because this would be done by navigation. So in the detail page, we're gonna do the same thing. We'll get the current to do. And for now, let's just display the title. And this will be optional, so that's not defined. And the extra import. So the home page right now, we could make it a list. So let's get the list from the store. So we'll say to-dos equals select to-dos. This will give us an array. So you can use a flat list in React Native. And we'll say data equals to-dos. Render item, we have to specify a function of how to render each item. And we could use a touchable opacity. And then in here, let's have a text. And we could say item.title. And then we have a key extractor function, which will tell it how to get the key from the unique key from each item. So we'll just say item.id. And that should be good there. And then let's just do an on press. So say handle to do press. And we'll pass in this do that we clicked on. And then what this will do is it will dispatch an action to the store to update the current to do. So we'll have to use the dispatch hook here. So we'll say use dispatch. And then in our function, we'll say dispatch. And we could say set current to do. And this takes it to do, so we just pass that in. And we're all set there. And this will dispatch an action to set the current to do in the state, which will then update the current to do in our main page, which will show the detail page instead of the home page. Okay, so we have that function. So on the touchable opacity, let's do on press. Handle to do press. And we'll pass in the item, which is a to do. Okay, cool. So I think this is pretty much there. And right now, these are just simple. We're showing the title in the list only, and then in the detail page we're only showing the title, so we could add something else. So if it's completed, we'll say done, else not done yet. And what else do we have in here? So date due, completed, title, have the date due. You just convert it to an ISO string, and then we'll say substring 0, 10 to get only the date part, not the time. So now we can do a npm run web. Those will just run our app in the web, as opposed to having to use the simulator. And we can see how it looks. So we'll start Expo, the Metro bundler here. And after this loads up, it will open your app in a separate tab. All right, so let's see what we have here. So one thing we don't have are any to-dos. So let's do a use effect, and we'll just add some mock data to our app. And we could say dispatch. Here we have to do use dispatch. So import, we create a variable with use dispatch, and then we'll say dispatch load to-dos. This would be an array. And we'll add some fake to-dos here. One title, date due, we could say new date. Today is the 13th, so I'll do 2020 11, say tomorrow. And then completed, let's say false. And then let's add some more, copy this one down, give it an ID, make sure you do unique IDs. Say workout, and we'll do this today, no, so it'll be 3, and then we'll say work, and do that today 2, or maybe we'll make it yesterday, and we can say it's completed already. So now if you open your app back up, you should see the 3 items there. Wrong browser. All right, so I'll put this on one side of the screen, make it easier to see. All right, so we have our items there, not super pretty, but it's working. So if you click on an item, you can see it will show you the detail. And if we want to go back to the previous page, we can say in our main page, I'll shrink this for now. So we got a touchable opacity button. Actually, let's add it to the detail page. So in our detail page, let's add a touchable opacity text. Go back. This is a really not pretty app, but we could you could of course do some styling, make it look nicer. And let's say create a function here. Go back. And this is gonna dispatch an event, so we'll have to use dispatch hook again here. So use dispatch, and then we'll dispatch the action set current to do. And if we go into this function, actually, let's just make this to do optional. So if you set it with nothing, it will just make it undefined, which will clear it out, which is what we want. So we'll use the go back function. And it doesn't like this arrow, so let's get rid of that and just make it say go back for now. So if you click on an item, you can go back and it'll clear it out of the store. And this is pretty much a working app right now with mock data. So what you could do is replace this dispatch here with a API call and load to-dos from your backend. And then it would be pretty much fully functional except for like actually completing items or adding new items. So you could look into that if you want. And then of course some styling, make this look a little bit nicer. But it looks like so far the simple functionality is there. So yeah, this is a tutorial on using React Redux with React Native. So what we did is we added a new store. We created a new store. We added a provider around our entire app in the app tsx file. And then we passed in the store to the provider to sync it up. And then that store is a reducer, which has many reducers combined to create it. In this case, we have a to-do reducer, which handles all to-do related functions. We created the action types enum here, and then these action arrow functions to actually handle the types. So this will give you the type safety. And then we have our actual reducer and then our selectors to actually get data. And of course, if you want to clean this up, you could move all of these into different files, and then you could add navigation using like the React Native navigation or tabs on the bottom. So feel free to spice this up a little bit. And if you have any questions, feel free to add those in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if it was helpful. Thank you.